Welcome to this technical talk on Ephesians 6:16. In my recent sermon on Ephesians 6, I challenged the translation of verse 16 found in the ESV. This talk addresses that issue from a technical viewpoint. Point. What does Paul really mean by taking up the shield of faith? Introduction. Today I want to take about 10 minutes to dig deeper into Ephesians 6:16, specifically the phrase «en pasin analavondes ton thireontis pisteos», in all, having taken up the shield of faith. This is a verse where English translations differ, and our understanding of it will shape how we understand the whole armor passage. This short video is a technical supplement to the sermon. Point. So let's slow down, look at the Greek closely, and see what Paul is actually doing here. First, the Greek phrase. The Greek reads, «en pasin, analavondes, ton thireontis pisteos». Let's take each word briefly. «En pasin». The Greek can translates as in, or in the midst of, or with, or among. The Greek pasin translates as all things. It is a plural neuter, so literally it means in all these, and as we'll see, all these naturally points back to the three items Paul just listed in verses 14 to 15, namely truth, righteousness, and gospel readiness. We'll return to this. Now, let's look at the Greek word, analavondes. It is a verb, an aorist active participle of analamvano, and so literally means having taken up. It is not an imperative, take up. It is a participial accompaniment to the main command which is found in verse 14, stete, stand. So the grammar is, stand, having taken up the shield of faith. Now, let's look at the Greek. Ton thireontis pisteos, translated as shield of faith. The Greek word, thireos. This refers to the large Roman rectangular shield, the scutum, used for full body protection. Our second main point, what the translations do. Now let's compare major translations, ESV and CSB translated as, in all circumstances take up the shield of faith. In doing this they make two interpretive moves. They turn, en pasin, into in all circumstances, and they treat, analavondes, like an imperative, take up. Now what about the NASB and NRSVUE and NET? This is how they translate it. In addition to all these, taking up the shield of faith. Here, en pasin, is translated as in addition to all these, that is, with all the other armor pieces, and the participle is translated more literally as taking up. These translations are much closer to the Greek structure. My third main point, why, in all circumstances, is unlikely to be not correct. There is no Greek word for circumstances in this verse. En pasin simply means in all these things or with all these things. And in grammar and context, the most natural referent of all these is truth, righteousness, and gospel readiness. That is, it is referring to the three participial armor pieces that immediately precede verse 16. So Paul is saying, with all these in place, truth, righteousness, and gospel readiness, having taken up the shield of faith, this fits the flow of the metaphor, the belt, the breastplate, and the shoes, and also the shield. Thus, ESV's in all circumstances is not impossible, but it is contextually unlikely. My fourth main point, what does the aorist participle having taken up mean? The participle analavondis is aorist, having taken up, or already having taken up. Aorist participles usually express a completed action that accompanies the main verb, and not a repeated or ongoing action. And this is where Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 to 10 becomes the interpretive key. Ephesians 2 uses the exact same terms, faith and salvation, and the same idea for truth, righteousness, and gospel readiness, but in a summary form. And Ephesians 2 explicitly gives the sequence of these: first faith in verse 8, then salvation in verse 8, and then walk in good works in verse 10. Ephesians 6 follows the same pattern, once you understand the participle is saying already having taken up. First, shield of faith in verse 16, then helmet of salvation in verse 17, and then truth, righteousness, gospel readiness in verses 14 and 15. So the participle fits the theology. Faith and salvation are the already taken up realities of conversion. Truth, righteousness, and gospel readiness are the transformed life, the walk that flows from salvation. Word and prayer are the active weapons used in battle. This is Paul's consistent order. Thus, having taken up is referring to your faith at conversion, and so already received is not a new effort. The shield protects because salvation protects. This is your secure standing in the Lord, as verse 10 says. Point 5. What Paul is actually saying in verse 16. Putting it all together, the sense is, with all these things in place, truth, righteousness, gospel readiness, stand firm, having taken up the shield of faith. This is the faith by which you were saved, and through which you are protected from the flaming arrows of the evil one. This reading fits the grammar, fits the armor metaphor, fits Ephesians 2, fits Ephesians 4-5, and fits the pastoral burden of the letter. Point 6. The payoff. Why does this matter? Because Paul is not telling believers, muster up faith whenever life gets hard. Rather, he is telling them, you already exercised faith when you came to Christ. You already stand inside his salvation. Now live out the truth, righteousness, and gospel life he created in you, and fight with the word and prayer. In other words, the shield is not something you try to pick up emotionally in a crisis. It is the settled protection of being united to Christ by faith. That is why Paul says, "Be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might." It is Christ's strength, not yours.